Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is. And it is the dumbest bill in America, and it is evicting the unvaccinated. You heard that correctly. Evicting the unvaccinated. There's a bill in Congress introduced by Congresswoman Cori and Senator Elizabeth Warren, and it is called the bill Keeping Renters Safe Act of 2021. Keeping Renters Safe Act of 2021. And the bill effectively allows the eviction of the unvaccinated. Here is the bill. Here's what the bill does, at least some parts of it. According to Forbes magazine, by the way, I did look this up in multiple magazines, as well as the bill itself. It says the new legislation is called Keeping Renters Safe Act of 2021. The legislation would protect renters from eviction by amending Section 361 of the Public Health Service Act. The Public Health Service Act already empowers the federal government to respond to communicable diseases such as COVID-19. The Keeping Renters Safe Act effectively would classify evictions as contributing to the spread of a communicable disease. So the legislation would empower the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to curb the spread of communicable diseases. Through the legislation, HHS and CDC would gain permanent authority to implement federal eviction moratoria to address medical and health emergencies such as COVID-19. Warren and Bush say that evicting renters during the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, is more than an economic issue. It's a health crisis. Why? Eviction moratoria could result in at least hundreds of thousands of Americans becoming homeless, argue Warren and Bush, which could increase the risk of spreading COVID-19. So podcast listeners, when you give additional authority and permanent authority to HHS and CDC, you're giving permanent authority to unelected bureaucrats. This is one of the problems in the United States of America. Congress won't do its job to vote on single subject bills, so instead, it basically gives the authority permanently to agencies such as the CDC and HHS. That's what this bill does. Normalizes their ability, the bureaucracy's ability, to be able to cancel rent permanently. Well, I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, that's the implementation of socialism. And if you've ever known or watched or seen the people that work at these agencies, they're all left-wing lunatics, all of them. They don't follow the science. You kidding? These are left-wing activists that are now making law, but they weren't elected to make the law. So one of the things that this bill allows them to do at the CDC and HHS is the bill allows those bureaucrats to say, hey, we're going to cancel the rent for everyone in your apartment complex, but if you're unvaccinated, we're not going to cancel the rent. So this bill is about evicting the unvaccinated. It's about rewarding Democrats. It's about penalizing people who are critical thinkers. So, if you're an automaton, great. You listen to CNN and MSNBC and Elizabeth Warren and Cori Bush. You're woke, so therefore you get to stay in your apartment rent-free. But everybody else, no, sorry. You just have to be evicted. And even if you want to pay your rent, we're still going to evict you. This is dangerous stuff, podcast listeners. I mean, these people have lost their minds and they're not really Americans. They're not. This Congresswoman, Cori Bush, and U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, this is un-American. This is not the function of our government. Our government is out of control, and now our government is giving the power to the unelected bureaucrats who themselves are out of control as well. So here's Congressman Cori Bush. And by the way, we have this clip, but Ilhan Omar is there with her just kind of looking on. And you can just see Ilhan Omar is like, oh, I can't wait to bring Marxism to the U.S. Everything I've been always wanting to do is just destroy the U.S. You can just tell People are sick. Here's the clip.
It is imperative that legislators provide protection now because we're being evicted. People are being evicted as we speak, as we stand here. People were evicted yesterday, weeks ago. People are having their wages garnished as a result of evictions.
Yes, so people are having their wages garnished as a result of eviction. Problem is that the eviction moratorium was still in place, so that's not true. Okay, but what they want, of course, what Cori Bush wants is to do what? To train people to understand that they deserve to live in an apartment or a house or somewhere and never have to pay rent ever again, which means they also don't have to work ever again. Because if you don't have to pay your rent, then the next thing is, well, we should have a moratorium on having to pay your electricity bill. We should have a moratorium on having to pay your cell phone bill. We should have a moratorium on having to pay your healthcare bill or your healthcare copays. We should, and then there it goes. There it goes. It's no longer a slippery slope to socialism and Marxism. It is Marxism. And this is what these people believe. It's expropriation of private property, literally expropriating the rights of private property owners and rewarding people who effectively don't want to go back to work. And you know what? 6 months ago, I wouldn't have said that. Today, there are plenty of jobs. It's time to get back to work, America. It's time to pay your bills, America. It's time. Enough. Enough of using this crisis as a way of bringing in Marxism-Leninism. So in Florida, if you think this is bad enough, Democrats support a Florida landowner who's evicting unvaccinated tenants. So in Florida, there's a landowner who intends to evict unvaccinated tenants, and the Democrats think that's okay. Occupy Democrats previously hailed Representative Cori Bush's protest to extend the eviction moratorium. So there you go. Everywhere you look, Cori Bush is there and Elizabeth Warren is there. They think this is okay. They like this segregation, this new vaccination segregation. And they also want to use it to divide people, to pit them against one another. And then at the same time, while you're so busy arguing, implement Marxism. After months of pushing to halt evictions for tenants hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic, progressives have found themselves on the side of the landlord when it comes to vaccine mandates. There you go. So landlords have been upset at progressives and Democrats because they want to cancel rent. But now the progressives are using the pandemic to get landlords on their side by saying, yeah, but you might get sued if you leave the unvaccinated in your buildings. Occupy Democrats, a progressive activist group, raised eyebrows last week after tweeting support for landlords who are evicting unvaccinated tenants. Breaking, a large Florida landlord announces that he will begin requiring all new and existing tenants to provide proof of COVID vaccination, saying, you don't want to get vaccinated? You have to move. And if you don't, we will evict you. Retweet if you support the landlord's move, the group tweeted. That's the Occupied Democrats. So this is the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, of implementing Marxism in the U.S. as it relates to private property rights and your right to live somewhere. So the same people who are saying, you might get evicted, that's really wrong, we need to cancel the rent, are saying, you should be evicted because you're not vaccinated. This is how far this so-called health emergency has gone. And I say so-called because at this particular point in the pandemic, you've had plenty of time to be vaccinated if you wanted to. You've had plenty of time to contemplate whether you want to remain unvaccinated. And that is your choice. That is your choice. So the health emergency is not there. But if there is a health emergency anywhere in the U.S., it's in emergency rooms in hospitals because of the millions of illegal immigrants who are coming here without health care. So there's that. But didn't we have a second clip on this? Did we play that yet? Did we play the second clip? So here's Ariana Presley, who also supports evicting the unvaccinated and is a co-signer of Keeping Renters Safe Act of 2021, unless you're unvaccinated, of course. Here's Ariana Presley. We have that clip. Here it is.
We chose to sleep on the steps of the Capitol. That was a choice. But millions more are running out of options, and it will not be a choice. But this is 100% preventable because eviction is a policy choice. So I want to thank Representative Bush for her leadership and Senator Warren for your steadfast partnership, for gathering us here all today. It is a pleasure to stand with you today and introduce this life-saving legislation, the Keeping Renters Safe Act.
Eviction is a policy choice, according to Ariana Presley. No, it's not. Eviction is a personal choice. You want to know why? Because all you have to do is pay your rent and you won't get evicted. And it's a personal choice if you don't pay your bills. It's also a personal choice if you don't want to work and you don't want to go back to work. That's a personal choice. At this particular point in time in the pandemic, okay, it is a personal choice. During the height of the pandemic, when you couldn't go to work because of the lockdowns and the shutdowns, I agree. You should not have been evicted. You should not have been. But fast forward, here we are, late September 2021. It's time for you to get to work and it's time for you to pay your bills. And if you don't, that's not a policy choice. That's a personal choice. You've decided, and we believe as conservatives in personal responsibility. Democrats think it's a policy responsibility. I mean, it's just ridiculous. These people are out to destroy our country, and they're doing a great job at it. And that's the dumbest bill in America.